What's up, everybody? It's Travis here from Travis.media. So imagine this. Imagine you start up this new company, let's call it Mobile Mechanics. And what it is someone at their home is having car issues, and instead of bringing the vehicle to you, you go out, you send these field agents out to service their vehicle at their house. So let's say somebody has a flat tire, or somebody needs an oil change, or they're just having a strange sound coming from their engine. They give your company a call and you send out these field technicians that go to them and fix their cars. So imagine you had this company, you started it up, things were going well. Well, it would only be a matter of time before you need some sort of web app or mobile app. Because imagine somebody calls your company, you're gonna have to put them in your database as a customer, you're gonna have to enter in their address, all of that stuff. You're also gonna have to create a work order, schedule a time, and assign it to a technician. You have to do an invoice. The technician will have to have like a mobile app to go out there. Hey, these are my work orders for the day. These are the addresses. And then they get there, they need to be able to add fields to the invoice, to edit the invoice, all of that stuff. You're gonna have to set that up. So you're gonna have to call an agency, you're gonna have to find some developers and get some kind of apps built for your business. Well, in this video, I want to give you one alternative. Now, those situations are needed a lot of times, but let me give you one alternative, and it's called AWS Honeycode. AWS Honeycode. And what this is a fully managed drag and drop web and mobile app builder that AWS released about a week ago. And it requires no coding at all. And I know this is a coding channel, and whether that's a great thing or not, we can talk about in another video. But for now, let me stay on topic. Like I said, it's fully managed. The app builder is drag and drop. I think it uses React on the back end. But you can drag in these components. And then the back end is actually tabular. So it's like these Excel sheets that are fully managed by Amazon, but there's these Excel sheets. So you have a number of tables that you create. You have relationships between the tables. So this column may have a relation to this thing. So a customer may have many properties, and a work order belongs to a customer, and an invoice belongs to a work order, those kind of things. You set all that up on the back end, and you can have like 100,000 rows per workbook. Pretty amazing. And then on the front end, like I said, it's drag and drop. So you can create your page, you can add stuff on the page, you can create variables, you can do all kind of neat stuff. What's neat about it is it's free for up to 20 contacts. So if you had like a 10-person business, this thing is free. What else is cool, again, is that it's fully managed. And it turns out, and it creates a solid web app and also a mobile app. Here's the app we're going to be building today on my mobile phone. And you can build it in a number of hours. So several hours to a day, you can build this whole app. Unless you need a lot of planning, then it might take a couple of days. It's also trigger driven. It's got built-in functions, built-in automations, and you can do things like send emails, all of that stuff. So what's the point of this video? Well, here's the thing. I wanted to see what it was all about. So I signed up for an account, it's free. And they have a number of templates, right? They have about 10 that you can pull in and use. They're actually ready to roll. But what I wanted to do was look at one of the templates and kind of figure out how to use this app builder. And so I grabbed this field agent template that we're going to be building today. I opened it up and I'm like, what? How do you relate tables to tables? How do you create variables and send it to different pages? How do you add and delete stuff on a page? How do you update state? Like, how do you use this thing? Because I couldn't quite figure it out up front. So what I did was I typed in AWS Honeycode tutorials and like nothing. I guess because it's brand new, I couldn't find any tutorials on it. So what I did was I said, hey, I'm gonna pull in this app. It's a really awesome app. And I'm gonna build it from scratch. So I'm gonna learn how to use this thing along the way and build it from scratch. And that's what I did, and that's what this video is all about. We're gonna build this field agent app from scratch. So we're gonna learn how to create the tables. We're gonna learn how to relate the tables. We're gonna learn how to write functions, filters, things like that. And then on the front end, we're gonna learn how to create pages, pass data to different pages. We're gonna learn how to add, to delete things on a page, how to filter things, all kind of good stuff. So if you've been looking for an AWS Honeycode tutorial, then go sign up for a free account and let's sit down and build this thing out together. And by the end of this, I think you'll know enough to be able to build almost anything you could imagine. So let's get started. All right, so before we get into this, my name is Travis. I'm a self-taught software engineer of like 4 years. And over this 4 years, I've been documenting my journey along the way, been sharing things with you here and on my blog that I've learned along the way. I mean, I love hearing other people's stories and see what other people are learning, and I just want to do that myself. So that's what I do on this channel. I just create videos about what I'm learning in the software industry. So if that interests you, consider hitting that subscribe button below. Lots of great videos planned for 2020. All right, so go to Google, type in AWS Honeycode, sign up for an account. It takes like 30 seconds, and let's get started building this app. All right, so the first thing we need to do is create a new project. So if you come up here to create workbook, just click on that and choose start from scratch. And this brings you to your tables section of the app. But what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go back, click this icon, go back to this main screen, and let's just rename this. So right click, choose rename. And I'm gonna call it Mobile Mechanics because that's the name of my app. Once you do that, go to these 3 dots, click edit to go back into your project. All right, so this, like I said, is the tables menu. So this is gonna be where all your tables are stored. So these are very similar to Excel sheets for all you Excel nerds out there. I'm a nerd, but I'm not an Excel nerd. So be sure to correct me where I'm wrong here. But this is basically where all of your data is gonna sit. So you have your tables section. Right under that, you have the builder, which is where your apps are gonna live. So you have your data, then you have your apps, and then of course, automations. So let's start out at tables. And let's start out with a table called customers. So you can click that. We already have a table they gave us. So let's use this one, right click on it, rename it to customers. And for our column headers, we're gonna have customer, phone, email. We're gonna have one called properties, which we'll talk about in a minute. And finally, one called work orders. And let's go ahead and put in some dummy data. So customer 1 is gonna be Travis test. And you can put anything you want for these. Made up phone number, travis@example.com. And then I'm gonna put, how about Joe Beans, 555 number, and joe@example.com. And the last row I'm gonna delete because it actually counts that. All right, so properties. What is this properties column? Well, I'm gonna have all of our address information in a different column, and you'll see why later. But what we're gonna do here in this properties column is we're gonna create a relation between this and our properties table. I'll explain that in just a minute. For now, let's create a new table by clicking this plus icon and add a blank table. Click that again, right click on that new table, and let's call it properties. And for these headers, we're gonna put full address, street address, suite, city, state, zip, and customer. All right, this customer column is going to be a relation between the tables. So think about it. Customers can have multiple properties, and then properties belong to a customer. So in our customers table, we have properties here. This is going to link to the properties related to that customer. And in our properties table, these properties are going to belong to this customer from the customers table. So how do we do this? Well, the first thing we can do is create a pick list in our customer table here showing all of the customers. So imagine when somebody goes to put in their information, there's a customer here we can choose to relate that to. So there's a number of ways we can do this, and I'm going to show the multiple ways as we build this app, but I'm going to start out with a really easy one by using this wizard up here. So click wizards and create pick lists here under data modeling. And what we want to do, we want to create a pick list here that's going to list all of the customers. So let's create a pick list for properties, this table, for unique values in customer, so this column here, and we're going to link to data in an existing table, which is the customers table. So if you look right here, it says creates a new table or adds a summary column to an existing table. So this is going to give us the customers here. It's also going to give us a summary column in our customers table. So watch this. Click apply, and that shows your pick list, and then you got to hit go. It's going to run the wizard. And now, under customer, I can click a drop down and it's going to show me not only my customers, but the entire rows for these customers. Now, if you go back to the customers table, you'll see we have a new column now called related properties. And what we can do is just replace this properties table with that. So let's take that and delete that column. Then we grab these three dots here and just slide this over one and change the column header to just be properties. So this says, hey, Travis Test has how many properties? None. Let's fix that. Let's go back to the properties table and create some dummy data. So for customer Travis, here's his address. So we're going to skip full address for now. We're going to go to street address. Let's say something like 50 Oak Street. Suite, no suite. Let's do Atlanta. And that's Georgia. And by the way, I don't know the zip, so I'm just going to make something up. Don't be offended. How about 38? Yeah. All right, that's for Travis. Then we got Joe Beans. Let's click Joe Beans as the customer, and let's put in a street address. So let's say 10 Circle Way. Suite is going to be 200. City is Fairfax, Virginia. I don't know the zip for this either, so I'm going to say 27399. And I'm going to delete this last row. Now check this out. Now that we've linked customers with this data, we can go back to the customers table and you'll see that each one has one associated property. That's cool. Work orders we'll deal with later. And if I click on that property, it'll show me the whole row. Hey, here's the whole row for Travis Test. Here's his address information. Here's Joe Beans' address information. Cool. Now the next thing we want to do is go back to the properties table and we need to put the full address. We want to have this auto-populate a combined address here. So we want the street address plus the suite plus the city plus the state plus the zip all in one address. It's important because now we have access to individual address variables plus the full address. So how do we do that? Well, in Excel you can use lots of functions. One of the functions being concatenate. So concatenate just adds a bunch of strings together. We just want to add these values together. And we want to do it for the whole column. So to do that, to do any function really in Excel and in Honeycode, you just come up here. Actually, I'm just going to do it in a cell for now so we can see the result. So if I come up here, all functions start with an equal. And the cool thing is you're going to get all of this, for lack of a better term, IntelliSense, giving you data to choose from. So what we want to do is just do a concatenate function. I'm going to start typing. It's going to show it to me. I can click that, and it tells me here, hey, combine several text strings into one string. So I'm going to combine all of these. So let's start out. In each one of these columns, you can access with brackets. So I'm going to put an open bracket. It's going to list them for me. So the first thing I want is the street address. And then it automatically puts a close bracket. And then I want to put a space between them. So to do that, I put a comma, a double quote, and then a space, and a double quote, and then another comma, and then another bracket. What do I want next? I want suite, comma, quote, space, comma, quote, space, quote, comma. What do I want next? I want city. Just continue this on. And state. And finally, zip. So I want zip. And you can see right here, actually, this thing wasn't in the way. You can see with these colors, it's highlighted the street address, suite, city, state, and zip. So it's showing me, hey, these things are going to be concatenated together. So I can click this check, and it's going to add the formula. And there it is. There's the full address concatenated together. Now, if you look right here, there's an extra space, and that's because we don't have anything for suite. So we need to account for when there is a suite and when there isn't a suite. And we can do that nicely with an if statement. So how do you do if statements in Excel? Well, let's go after this equals, and let's just scoot this over a little bit. We can do if, put our parentheses. We can do if suite is not equal to nothing. So if suite is not empty, see these two quotes, if suite is not empty, then we want to concatenate. So let's put this here. Let's highlight that, cut it, and go after these open quotes. If suite is not empty, comma, and then we add this concatenate. So that adds the suite. But if suite is empty, we don't want suite in our concatenate. So we put another comma and do the else statement. So if this, else, let's paste in that concatenate again, and remove the suite. All right, and then let's hit this check to run the function, see if it worked. Yep, it worked. Now what we want to do is grab this entire function. Instead of applying it to that specific cell, we want to apply it to the whole column. So let's select the column, right-click and go to Format. We don't really care about the format, but we need a column formula. So just paste it in that column formula, click Apply, and it should now apply to all cells in that column. Awesome. So we got our customers table, we got our properties table, we have the relation between the two. Let's go ahead and start building our app. So come here to Apps, click Plus, and build your own. So just a few things to note. Right here, this is a link button. This links the mobile with the web. So whatever I do to this, it's going to apply that to the mobile and the web version of this app. If you unlink them, you can do two separate designs, or you can separate things out. I'm going to keep it linked for this project. Screens, this gives you a list of the screens in your app. You can hit plus to add a new screen. And finally, you can add objects by clicking this and choosing from the list. So the first thing we want to do, let's go ahead and create a customers page. So we have a page here they've given us. Let's add customers up here. In this page, we just want to list out our customers. I'm going to right click on this, go to edit, and change this to customers. So we have a customers header. Now down here, we want to list our customers. So how do we do that? Well, let's add an object called a list. And we're going to add a stacked list. Let's click that. And it's going to give us some options. So list source. The source is going to be customers. And what do we want to display from that customers table? Well, we want to display the customer, the phone, the email, not the properties, because this isn't going to give us what we think it will, and not work orders. So let's remove those two. Allow users to filter the list. I don't want to do that. Add a detail screen. I do want to do that. That makes it so we can click on the customer, and that takes us to a more detailed screen about that customer. They do all the work behind the scenes. Pretty cool. So make sure you check that and just click Create. All right, so if I click off that, let it populate, it's going to show the customers. And if you click the whole section, it's going to show you a list, one of two customers. So I can flip to the next customer, flip back to the next customer. Now, what does this look like in the app? Well, you can come up here and click View App, and we'll see what it really looks like. So here is our customer page, customers page, and we have two customers. This is pretty big, so we're going to put some of these side by side. You also see there's a search menu. That can be turned off and on by selecting the list section and just checking or unchecking that. I'm going to leave it on for now. And let's rearrange this a little bit. So let's select, and by the way, this is a header and this is a field. That's all that is. So let's take both of these and slide this halfway. Let's do that for all three. Let's select the phone header and move that up here beside the customer, and let's select the actual field and put it under the phone number. Let's delete that segment, and we're just going to leave email like that. If I click off that, you see that saving changes, it automatically saves your changes. I can come over here and see the changes immediately. So I can search by customer. I can put Travis. There's just Travis. I can also click on a customer and go to a more detailed page. Pretty cool. And there's a navigation up here. I can click on customers. Great. Now the question is, how do we add a new customer? So I'm thinking here we want to put a new customer button up here. So let's do that. So I'm going to, let's grab segment, add a segment to the page, take this whole block and just move it up here to the top. I'm going to remove the content box, and in this segment, I'm going to add a button. Make it a lot shorter and just put add customer. And I'm going to leave it blue. We'll do some styling later. But if you wanted to, you can click the button. You can come up here. You can change the background and the actual text. You can change the size of the text, whatever you want to do. I'm going to click Add Customer. So if I click this button, I have these properties that come up over to the right. So we don't have any data with a button. But with display, we can set visibility to true. We can put it as false and hide it. We can also put some kind of conditions in there. But what we want is actions. Now with actions, you can add an automation, or you can just do a quick action. What happens on click? That's what we want in this situation. We want on click to navigate to a new screen. That new screen, we're going to go ahead and just click create a new screen. And that's it. That screen is called screen, but we can fix that over here. Go to the screen section, find that, right click, edit, and we'll call it new customer. And that's this screen here. Let's go ahead and change the title to new customer. And down here, so if this was a regular software app, we'd have to add fields and we'd have to do all kind of stuff. Well, with Honeycode, we can just add a form and it automatically does a lot of the work for us. So click down here in the body, go to add objects, and you'll see form here. Just click that, and it's going to give us some options. Hey, placement. Do you want a button on this page that goes to another form screen? Well, no. We just created the button. Now we want the form. So we're going to put the form in the current screen. Add form data to customers. So when we submit this form, we want to add a row to the customers table. And you want to display what on the form? We do want the customer. We do want the phone, the email. We don't want properties. Again, that's a relational column. We don't want that. And we don't want work orders, so remove that. So just customer, phone, email. Hit create. And click off of that. And great. All right, so let's take a minute to check out our app to be sure that works. So let's go to customers. We know all of this works here. Let's click add customer, and it should take us to that new customers page, which has a form on it that has 3 fields. Great. We have a cancel, we have a done button. Good job. All right, so let's think about this. When we create a new customer, we want to add, let's go back to our customer table. We want to add the customer name, the phone, and the email, right? But we also want to add the address, which is going to be in the properties table. So if we go to properties, we see we're going to want to add the street address, suite, city, state, and zip. And we're going to relate that to a customer. So let's set that up. So let's go back to our app and our new customer page or screen. So the first thing I want to mention is that these data cells contain variables. So anytime you see this $sign, that's going to be a variable. If I click on the data cell, I see here that it's chosen as a variable, that it's editable, meaning you can edit it, and that it has a variable name up here. Now, I don't want the variable name to be customer content. I want it to just be customer. And you'll see this used more in a minute. But I'm going to do that for all 3. Phone content, I'm going to remove. Email content, I'm going to remove and just leave email. So your variables are going to be customer, phone, and email. So going back to that property screen, we want to add more to this. So let's just grab this segment and do a copy, paste a couple times. So let's copy that, paste it, paste it, paste it, paste it, paste it. All right, so now let's go down and change each one of these to match what's on the properties table. So for the header here in the data cell, I want to change the set shared source, not to customers, but to properties. And again, this is just the header, but let's change that to properties. And then we want to change this to street address. That's going to update for us in just a minute. But as for this data cell, we want to change this variable to street address. And we want to go down and do that for each one. And by the way, my keyboard, for some reason, enters certain letters in twice. So if you see that, just bear with me. So we got street address. We want to change this one to suite. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy this so that I have properties there. We're going to change each one of these. So this one we're going to change to suite. Change that to suite. Let's go ahead and do all these. This one is going to be city. This one is going to be state, and then zip. Finally, zip. All right, so those should update accordingly. So let's change our variables. So I'm gonna click here, let's change this to suite. I'm gonna change this to city. State and zip. All right, and just to be sure, these are all variables, not shared. All right, so think about this. We don't need to pull any data because when the user, the call center, whoever's taking the call, whoever's adding the new customer, maybe the field technician, they're going to be adding data here. They're not going to be pulling any data. So we can skip having to pull data here, but we do want to come to this done button. We want to click on that. And what happens is when we're done, when we click this button, we want to send all of these values to the tables, to the proper tables. Now it's already set up to send to the customers table, but we need to set the ones up for the properties table, the address that we just added here. So let's go to Actions, Edit Automation. We want to add a row to customers, that's correct, and add data to new row. So first we're going to add the customer variable. Now here's an example here. See this $? This is going to be the customer variable, which is going to be defined here. We're going to add that to the customer column. Now we don't have to say like customers table, customer column, because up here we're saying, hey, we're adding row to customers. So it already knows, hey, the customer column. So we're going to add the phone variable to the phone column. We're going to add the email variable to the email column. Now if you look up here, we're sending those to the customers table. We want the rest of this to go to the properties table. So I'm going to close that. We're going to send those to customers, fine. But we need to add another action after that. We need to add a row, and we need to add the row to the properties table. All right, and we just need to go down the list. So take data from, and we're going to hit equals, and then the $, and then just type like the first letter or two, street address. So street address, we're going to send the street address variable, or the street address input. We're going to write it to, and it already knows here, because we're using the properties table, to street address. We're just going to move down and do these one by one. So click add another. We're going to do one for suite. Suite, we'll add that, we'll write that to the suite column. We'll take the city to the city column. Take the state to the state column, and finally the zip to the zip column. And you'll see I'm choosing these from these suggestions. That just keeps things more accurate, I think. And zip. All right, so here's the big question. Remember in our properties table, we have that customers relation column. Well, how do we add the right customer to that column? Well, think about it. We just added a row to customers. Now we're in the properties. So we can grab the last row from the customers, which is the one we just added before this step. So up here where it says add row to customers, we can grab the last row of that table, grab that customer, and add that to our properties customer column. So here's what that looks like. All right, so here's what we need to do. We need to add another. And instead of just taking data from a variable and adding it to the row, what we're going to do is we're going to use a function called find last row. So find last row returns the last row that matches the condition. So think about it. Up here before, we added the row to customers. So that's going to go in as the last row. So we're going to be able to grab that row, that last row, and add that entire row in that properties customers column so that we can have that pick list. So here's how you do that. Find last row. The first parameter is the table. So the table is going to be customers, of course. I'm going to do a comma, then I'm going to put 2 quotes. In between those quotes, I'm going to put this. So customers again. So we want to select the customer sheet, and within that, I want to grab the customer column. So that's going to get the customer name. We want that to equal, so put an equal sign, the variable customers from this form. So right here, customer. And so find last row is going to return the last row that matches the condition out of the customers table where the customer column, so this customer name, equals the customer that's going in this form. And we want to write that to the customer column in the properties table. Hope that makes sense. And one thing that happens in Honeycode is sometimes you get this warning when it's not a warning. It's not a problem. So this is a completely valid function. Nothing's wrong with it. It tells you, hey, formula returns a syntax error. There's no syntax error. This happens every now and then, and you have to trust your judgment on it. So let's try it out and see if it works. So I'm going to come over here to my app. I'm just going to refresh to make sure I got the latest changes. And we're going to try to add a customer and see if it goes in correctly. So here's my customers page. I'm going to go to add customer. And let's enter in, let's do Bob Jeans. Got a 555 number. Email is bob@example.com. Street address is 444 Square Drive. Suite is 20. City is Orlando, Florida. Zip code, let's say this. I used to live there and I don't remember what the zip code was, but I think it was a 9 something. So I'm gonna put that. And I should be able to click done. I should see it now added to my customers page. So here's the customer, Bob Jeans. But the real test is to say, hey, did this go in properly? Does the properties table have that pick list for Bob Jeans? Let's check it out. So I'm going to go over here to tables, click on customers first. You're going to see Bob Jeans. And you're going to see that the properties, there's one property for Bob Jeans, and there it is. So we see that it did work, and just to confirm, we can go to properties, and we have Bob Jeans added here. So hey, Honeycode sometimes gives you warnings where there's not a warning and things are working fine. Trust your judgment. If you wrote a good function, roll with it, see if it works. So we have some good functionality now. We have all of our customers listed on a page. We have a customer's detail, so we didn't check that out, but if we go to Bob Jeans, we can click on that, and we see, hey, we got Bob Jeans, customer name, phone, email. Properties, we got one property. We kind of want to remove that. We're going to add stuff later to this, but properties and work orders, let's go ahead and remove it. So if you go to customer's detail and find the segment with work orders, let's delete it, and the segment with properties, let's delete it. Let it save our changes, and we shouldn't see that anymore. There it is, gone. Great. All right, our app is going really well. Now the next thing we want to do is to talk about work orders. So the field technician has some work orders that he's got to do throughout the day. He's got to go to people's houses, he's got to fix their cars. Before we add that though, actually let's go back to our tables. Before we add that work orders table, we want to add a status table. So we want to know if our work order is open or closed. Is the work order finished or is it still open? So let's go ahead and add that. That should be really easy. So add a blank table. I'm going to open this up. I'm going to rename it status. And here we're just going to put status. We're going to remove these 2 columns. And I'm going to add 2 values, which is open and closed. That's all. Make sure you delete this final row. Delete table row. Great. So now we have a status table with open and closed values. We can keep track of the work orders that way. All right, next, let's go ahead and create our work orders table. So add a new table, add a blank table. Change the name to work orders. Here we're going to put a lot of stuff, so I'm just going to open up some more columns while I'm here. Let's do issue, date, time, notes, agent status, invoice, customer, and address. All right, so most of this is self-explanatory. The date is going to be the date, the scheduled date for the work order, and the scheduled time for the work order. So let's go ahead and add in some row links. So row links, remember earlier we used wizards and we added this create pick lists. Well, that's a two-way thing. That's a wizard for making that easy. But you can also add it without that. It's pretty easy. Just click on status. We want a pick list of open and close, right? So highlight the column, go to format, and here we want to format the column as a row link. So you're going to use this a lot. And we want to enable a pick list, okay? We want to be able to pick from a list. Set the source type as a table, and it's going to be the status table. So this is going to give us the values in the status table in a pick list. And just to add, you can customize like what column you want to return. You can add a number of them put together, but there's only one in this one, so we don't have to do that. So leave it default, and we just click apply. And that's going to add this pick list to each one of our rows. So I can click here and I get a status of open or closed I can choose from. Now in the agent list, this is going to be the agent we assign this work order to. So I can right click, go to format. I'm going to set this format as contact. And display preference is first name, last name. And I can hit apply. And that's automatically going to create this pick list for me to choose contacts. So if I come down here and I go to teams, there's going to be a number of contacts on my team. And this is going to give me a list. Now it's only me here, so you're just going to see me, so I'm going to be the agent. But you should see all of your contacts, which would be your employees or however you're handling that. Next, we need a pick list for customers. So select that column, do the same thing for that. Go to format. We want to format the column as a row link. Enable the pick list, set the source type as a table, and we want the table to be the customers. And by default, it's going to be the customer name, which is, I think, the first column. That's why it does it. But I can add something different here. But I'm going to leave it default and hit apply. And now I should be able to choose from the list. So you may have, 3 work orders for one customer. So you want to be able to pull the whole list here. Next, we just want some basic formatting. So for the date column, we want to format that as a date. And I like that preference. Hit apply. And for the time, we want to format for time. So choose the time. And I like that preference. You can choose something different. I don't want any seconds on there. So hit apply. All right, so let's go ahead and create like a mock work order. So the issue is oil change, right? The date is going to be, what is today? July 1st. Let's have today's date. So 7/1/2020. That's going to fix the formatting for me. The scheduled time is going to be at 9:00 a.m. No notes. The agent is going to be, I'm the only one, so choose me. Status is open, of course. Invoice, there's nothing for invoice yet. We'll address that later. Customer, who's the guy having trouble? It's Joe Beans. Now, what about address? So we want the address to just show the address for the customer we have in this field. We want to drop down, but we want it to show only the address for that customer. So what we can do is select the column, go to format, and create a row link. And this time, instead of selecting table as our source type, we're going to choose filter. So we're going to use a function called filter. So just type in filter. Now filter filters a table and returns any rows that match the filter conditions. And it takes 2 arguments. First, the table that you want to get the data from. That, of course, is going to be our properties table because that's where our addresses are. So let's type in properties. And then the second argument, I'm going to put some quotes here. The second argument is going to be our condition. So we're going to want to say properties sheet and the customer within that property sheet, so bracket customer, must equal the customer here in our work orders chart. Now this is going to return the row the properties row that matches this customer. So we can put here, so we can just put brackets and C, and you'll see customer in the table work orders. So whatever this customer is, where it says Joe Beans, we want to match that customer and get that row out of the properties table and put it in this address pick list. So that looks good. And so we got everything here. We don't need a column formula. What we can do is just click apply. This is going to apply that, and you'll see the pick list come here. And so we have our customer, Joe Beans, and we should be able to click right here and get his address. Great. We not only get his address, but we get the entire row from the properties table, because that's what filter does. It returns a row. So let's go ahead and select that for address. And let's add a second one in there. Let's say flat tire. The date, and this is going to be the next day. Can't do them both in one day. This is going to be at 10 a.m. Agent is going to be the only guy, Travis. Status is open because it hadn't happened yet. Customer, this is also Joe Beans. Actually, let's choose Bob Jeans. He has the flat tire. And when we click here, we should see only his address. So yeah, Bob Jeans, we select his address. Great. So now we have a work orders table that's working with some dummy data. All right, so before we jump back into the app, let's go back to the customers table, and we see we have a work orders column here. So we want to relate this work orders, like this customer has which work orders. We want it to be like this. We can click on the work orders for that customer and see the whole row. All right, so this one's going to be done a little bit differently. So if you right click on the column and go to format, instead of this time creating a row link, we don't really want a pick list. We want one of these little filter icons. So we're just going to format the column as auto. We're just going to leave that default, but we're going to come down here to the column formula. We're just going to run a formula in this column. That's basically what happened in properties too. But here's what we're going to use. We're going to use this filter function that we just used. And again, it takes two parameters, the table and the condition. So filter, we want to filter from work orders table. Put a comma and some quotes. Let me close that parentheses too. And we want to put work orders, and we want to target the customer in the work orders table. We want that to equal, and this is going to be new, a function, and I don't know if this is with Honeycode or Excel. I think it's just with Honeycode, but they have a function called this row. So if we just type in this, we get it, we see it right here. It returns a row link to the selected cell in a table. All right, pretty straightforward. Returns a row link to the selected cell in a table. So let's click it. All right, and that's it. So work orders. So this filters the work orders table for the work orders customer that equals this row. So let's hit apply. Let's click off of that. Let's hit apply, and we should get these little filter symbols just like the properties table to the left. So remember, Joe Beans has a work order. Let's click that little symbol. There's Joe Beans' work orders, and here is Bob Jeans' work orders. Great, so we have a relation built there too. As far as this row link, it's really versatile. I would recommend looking it up. And by the way, looking things up in Honeycode, there's just a forum out there. There's like not a whole lot of tutorials. That's why I'm trying to figure this out. But if you're in this screen, you can click this question mark and just type in this row, and then click on the reference, and it'll take you to the page you're probably looking for. So this row returns a row link to where the formula is executed. This row works in any row in a table or in any list in an app. By itself, it may not seem very useful, blah, blah. You can read all about that here. They give you the syntax and an example, a really helpful example. But this is going to be a long video. I got to keep moving. So be sure to look that up. All right, great. So next, let's think about this. So if we had a work orders page, we don't want to show work orders from today and tomorrow and next week and next month, things like that. We want to be able to say, hey, what are the work orders for today? Like I'm a field operator and I open this app and I click work orders. I want to see my orders for today. And then somebody else might want to see work orders that are upcoming. And then some people may want to just see all orders. So we need a way to filter those orders. So we should create a table with those 3 variables in it: today, upcoming, and all, so that we can use those as a filter. So let's go ahead and create that table, and let's call it summary. So create a new blank table, right click and rename it summary. Column is going to be summary, and in that column we're going to have today, upcoming, and all. Be sure to delete the extra columns. And that's it. That's it for that table. In addition to this, if we're going to have it broken up into days, we should probably have another column for the work orders for that day. So let's do work orders. And so here we want all the work orders for today. Here we want all the work orders for future. Here we want all the work orders, period. So to do that, we only have 3 variables. Let's do these individually. So here we can just say, we're going to be applying it directly to each cell. So let's come up here and do filter. We're going to filter out each work order to meet this criteria. So let's type in work orders, comma, and put my quotes in parentheses. And we can say work orders, and we're going to get the date. Work orders date equals, and there's this nice function called today. Click that, make sure you put these parentheses to call it, and that's it. You can hit the check button. That should show you today's work orders. Now we're going to take that and apply it to the next one. This is going to be upcoming. For this one, you would put, of course, greater than today. Let me hit the check button. So if we click these, we're going to see today I got an oil change, and tomorrow I got a flat tire to deal with. And for all, we can just put filter work orders. That's going to give us all work orders. Hit the check button, and that should show us 3. Oh my goodness, why do we have 3? Because we didn't delete that extra column. So anytime you have a blank column, it's going to be counted. So be sure to remove those. But that's really helpful, this summary table. We have work orders broken up by today, future, and all. Again, delete this extra row. Great. Okay, now that we have all of our work order stuff squared away, let's go ahead and create the page. So let's go back to our app and create a work orders page. So where you see screens, hit the plus button. Let's call the page work orders, and then change that over here also. And what we're going to do here is we're going to add, let's open objects. We're going to add 3 buttons because we need to filter between the work orders for today, for upcoming, and for all. So let's create a segment in there, create this content box, and just add 3 buttons. 1, 2, 3. Let's make them shorter, even shorter than that. Let's put them side by side. Here I'm going to put today, upcoming, and all. And I'm going to make these 2 a little shorter, this one a little bigger. I don't know why, just want to do that. And then under that, we want our list of work orders. So we're going to type in list and choose a stacked list. What's their source? It's going to be work orders. And let's not do a filter, but yes, let's add a detail screen. And let's just keep all of this stuff and just click create. And let's see what that looks like. So work orders, it's all stacked. So let's put these side by side. So issue, date, time, notes, and agent, and status. So let's grab the date Yeah, and I know this is tedious. You don't have to do this, but I just don't like to leave it like that. Put status there. Let me remove these empty segments. Let it save. And that looks way better. So here's the first issue. So here's the first work order, the second work order. And here's our filter search. I'm going to cut search off because I don't think we need it. So let's cut that off. All right, great. So we have these buttons up here, but they don't do anything. So what we want to do is we want to create some kind of variable that we can change. Like if I click on today, it's going to get the work orders for today. If I click on upcoming, it's going to grab the work orders for upcoming, and same for all. So we need to create some kind of variable. You know, in coding, we call this like a flag, like something equals false until we flip it to true. So up here in this segment, I'm going to create, let me remove this list. I'm going to create a data cell. And I'm going to change the name up here to work orders criteria. And I'm going to go to data. I'm going to make sure this is a variable, not a shared source. So it's a variable. And what I want to do by default, I want to initialize this variable to be today. And that's the first column in the row. So I can just basically do find row. And I can put summary. So for the summary table, close out of that. And that should get that first row, which is today. That's going to return the first row. So find row returns the first row that matches the condition. So that's just going to say, hey, by default, we're going to show today's work orders. Then I want to go to display. I want to choose the content box, and I want to choose set visibility to false because we don't want anybody seeing this. Set that to false. Let it change, and then we'll check the app. All right, work orders. I don't see anything up here. Good. All right, so let's take a step back again. So when we have these buttons, like if I click on today, I want to show today's work orders. But if I am on today and I click that button again, I don't want it to do anything, right? So if I click a button, I want it to go to that. But if I click it again, I don't want it to do anything else. All that is to say I need two of each button. I need a button that does something and a button that doesn't do something. Let's just do it and then you'll understand afterwards. So let's take this button, copy and paste it. This button, copy and paste. This button, copy and paste. Now this top button, we want to show it when this variable, so we have this variable here called work orders criteria. So we want to show this button when work orders criteria equals today. So essentially, this button's not going to do anything. We just want to show it when today is being displayed below it. We want to do that for the other ones too. So I'm going to copy that. I'm going to go to upcoming, set visibility to upcoming. Then I want to go to all, set visibility to all. So when that variable equals all. And we don't need any actions with these because these don't do anything. But the ones below this do. These are the ones when upcoming is selected, we want today and all to be ready to be clicked. So down here with today, I want to say work orders criteria is not equal to today. Copy that. I'm going to go to upcoming and do the same thing, but change it to upcoming. And finally, go to all. Change that to all. And these are the buttons that we want to do something when they're clicked. So when today is clicked, we want an action here. And so on click, we want to update the current screen. And what do we want to update? Well, we want to update that variable. So we want this work orders criteria variable. We don't want to take this row. We actually want to get the whole row for that condition. So if it's today, we want to get that row because we want that work order. We want that entire work order from that row, that today row. So we want to do instead find row. We're going to use find row and basically the same conditions. We want to go from the summary table and we want to put our condition. So I'm going to put some quotes. And we're going to say summary. And then we want the day. We don't have a day column. Hold on. Let's go back for a second to our summary table. Let's change this. I don't know why we put summary. We need to put day. These are days. Today, upcoming, all. These are days. So let's do that, and then let's go back to our app again. And when we click on this Today button, we want to update the current screen. We want to find row from the summary table. And then the condition is going to be summary. So the summary table, and we're looking for the day. And that needs to equal today. Now, there's something weird. I don't know if this is Excel. Again, I'm not an Excel nerd. I'm just a nerd. But you got to put like tons of quotes here. So what normally I would just do like today, and then I'd put the end quote. But you actually got to put 2 double quotes. So there's a quote to start this whole thing and a quote to end it. And then there's 2 quotes on each side of today. So we want to find that row that equals today, and we want to write that to the variable. And then, of course, we want to take that data and serve it down here. So let's do this much first. Click off of that. I got this swirly thing. This blue dot, by the way, means that success, means that your function is great. If you have a blue one with a little dot in the middle or not a filled in dot, that's a warning. And then, of course, if it's red, it's an error. So this looks good. So let's do the same thing for upcoming. So let me just highlight this and copy it. Let's go to upcoming and say the action. We're going to update the current screen. We're going to update that variable. I'm going to paste this here, and instead of today, we're going to put upcoming. Got a blue dot, good. And we're going to go to all. Whoops, update the current screen, set this variable, paste this in, and it's going to be all. So that takes care of those buttons. The last thing we need to do is make sure that this complies down here. Like, we need this down here to go along with whatever this variable is updated to. So let's click here. This whole list has a source. If we go to data, the source is work orders. We don't want that. We want the source to be the variable, the work orders of the variable, not the all the work orders there. So we can do, let's remove this. Let's do an equal. We want to grab our variable. So that's the work orders criteria variable. And then what do we want from it? We want the work orders. So we're going to grab the work orders from the summary table. And that's it. Let's click off of it. Make sure we get the blue dot. Good. Now it's going to save changes up here. Yeah, there it is, saving changes. Let's go to our app and refresh and see if our buttons are working. All right, work orders starts out with today. Today is July 1st. So good. Click today. Good. Nothing happens. Now if we click upcoming, we should see the upcoming one. Yeah, there it is, flat tire. That's for tomorrow. And then all should give us both, or all. Good. Things are working great. Good job. All right, so we have currently customers, customer detail. We have a new customers page for new customers. And then we have work orders and work orders detail. What's next? Well, I think next we need invoices. So we need a way to invoice people while we're out in the field. If we're doing work, we got to be able to charge people for it. So let's go back to the tables and create an invoice table. Create a blank table. We can jump over to the left and rename this invoice. And here's the columns for this one. Let me create some new ones just to make it easier. So let's put title, notes, unit cost, quantity, labor, total, and the associated work order for that invoice. So for work order, we want to create a row link that'll show us all of our work orders so we can create invoices. So let's go format and create a row link. Enable pick list. We're going to choose the whole table of work orders because we're going to, our invoices come from these work orders. So I'm going to hit apply. Now I can drop this down. I can see all of my work orders. So let's put in some dummy data. Title, let's say oil. Unit cost, a quart of oil is like $5. Quantity, it takes 4 quarts to do an oil change, I think. Labor, let's say $10 for labor. Total, we need to do some math here. So let's go to format and column formula. And then let's do unit cost times quantity. And then plus labor. All right, and apply that. And we get 30. So 5 times 4 is 20, plus 10 is 30. Good. Let's do something else. Let's do tire. Unit cost is, let's say, $100 a tire. Guy needed 2 tires. Labor, let's say $20. And total is going to be 200, so 100 times 2 is 200, plus 20 is 220. Just late updating there. And let's see, this was from Bob Jeans, and this is from Joe Beans. I really didn't mean to rhyme those, by the way. It just happened like that. So let's delete the table row. Actually, we probably don't want 2 of these because one of them is in the future. Let's see, date oil changes today. Let's just have 1 then for today. All right, so with invoices, we don't need a page. We need to add that probably to the work order. So let's go back to our app. So we have a work orders page and we have a work orders detail. So the detail of the work order is probably where we're going to have the invoice info, and we'll deal with that later. But for right now, we need to be able to enter in a new work order. So if somebody calls the office and says, hey, I need this done, we need to be able to enter in a new work order because obviously we don't want to do that from the back end. We want to be able to enter in things, delete things from the app. So let's create a new work order page. So let's go to this plus. New work order. Up here, we're going to put new work order. And we're going to add a form here. So hopefully you're getting used to this. Let's choose here and add a form. And we want to add form data to work orders. And there's a whole bunch of information here. I'm going to just use it all. We can remove it if we don't need it. And form is going to be in the current screen, and let's create. All right, so let's click out of that. So we have issue, date, we have all these fields. We probably want customer at the top. So let's drag this up. So let's drag this up. And we want address. Let's drag that up too. So we want the customer and address at the top, definitely. And the way I see it is a new work order is going to be already for a customer. So if somebody calls, we're going to get customer info. We're going to enter that, and then we can do the new work order. So I'm thinking that the customer name is just going to be a drop down of all the customers. Okay, I got you entered in the system. Let me pick you from the list, and then we'll do your work order. However, the actual app that we're mimicking allows you to put in a new customer here as well, like all from this one page. We're going to do that later because it's a little more complicated, but for now, we're just going to stick to this simple setup. So up here, we just have display. We just have a row link, which is just going to be a drop down of the customers in the table. Well, I think we want to alphabetize that. So let's do a filter instead and do an order by. So we haven't done that yet. That should be fun. So let's create a row link. Instead of a table, let's do a filter. And we can do filter, customers, and then we can do a comma here. So the customers table, do our quotes, and we can just type in order by I'm going to order by the customer's customer. So specifically that customer value. So this is going to order the names alphabetically. Let's click off that. We should get a blue dot. We do. Now let this save. We're going to go to our app and click on New Work Order. And we should see alphabetically B, J, T. Yeah, so things are ordered. There's our drop down. Now the address, when we click this, we want to only see the address for that customer. So we've done this before, so we need a filter for that. So let's click here. And we have a filter going. And they almost had it right here. There's an error. I don't know why there's an error, but the filter they had by default is almost right, except up here, we want to set this variable as customer. So I don't want customer content. I just want customer. We'll go to data, make sure it's a variable. And then here, instead of, so it's filtering from the properties table, properties customer equals customer. Well, this customer right here is going to be what's on this page, but there is nothing yet. We actually want the variable because it hadn't been defined. It's going to be defined. So let's erase that. And let's do our $. And we're not getting auto-generated for some reason, but I'm just going to type it anyway. Customer. All right, and there's the blue dot. We'll click off that. And let's go back to the app. Let's select Travis Test. Now in this drop-down, I should only see my address. There it is. 50 Oak Street. Let's go to Bob. I think Bob lives in Florida. There's Orlando. So yeah, they almost had it right. We just need to make sure it equals this variable customer because we want it to change as that variable changes. Now there's a couple of things we don't need here, like invoice. We don't need invoice, so let's delete that. Let's format the date and time, which actually they've already done, so no problem there. So overall, I think things look good. I think we can leave it. Let's just check the actions here. Let's go to Actions, Edit Automation. Make sure it's all being sent to the right place. So action is to add a row to the work orders. So we got issue, date, time, issue. What is issue? We got issue, date, time, notes, agent, status, invoice. We can remove invoice because we don't want that going. Customer and address. So when we submit this, we want to navigate to the work order screen. So we entered a new work order. We want to be able to see the screen with that work order now added. So I'm going to click off of that. It's saving changes. Let's give it a test, see how it goes. So I'm going to go to work orders. I got one work order for today, one for tomorrow. Let's do one for July 3rd. So let's go to new work order. Name, it's for this Joe Beans guy. He's having an issue. Here's his address. The issue is windshield wiper blades are shot. Date, we're going to do 7/3. The time, we're going to get to him at 9 a.m. Notes, I don't have any notes. Agent, again, it's just me. And the status is, of course, open. So I should be able to click done, and I have a new work order. Let's go ahead and jump over there and be prepared for it. So we can go to work orders. We only have 2 in there. Now let's go ahead and click done. And we get over to the work orders page. It's not showing because it's an upcoming order. Upcoming, there it is. Windshield wiper blades are shot. Status open, all that looks good. Let's come to the, yeah, there we go. We got an issue, date, time, agent, status, customer, and address. Wonderful. And I can click on that and see the details. And the details need some work. Now there's one more very important thing. Let's go back to the app. And we're going to talk about navigation. Very simple thing. App navigation. If you click that, you see that we're showing, actually, since we're in mobile, you'll see the navigation down here. We have a customers, new customer, work orders, and new work order as showing in navigation, and then we have some hiding from navigation. What we want only is work orders, customers, and new work order. This new customers, all this stuff can be reached from those screens. I'm going to put that down there. So we just have three options. That's in our mobile, and in our web. See if we can view it on the web. Yeah, so our web is going to have them at the top. I like to stay in mobile. And so our navigation looks good. So hey, you got two options at this point. There's a lot more to do, and there's a lot more advanced stuff we're going to talk about. So if you want to get a cup of coffee and join me back in a few minutes, pause the video. I'm going to fix up this details page. So if we go to the details page, this needs some work. Like we need to have the invoice in here. We also need to be able to edit these. So what if the customer's like, hey, I can't do it till 12, and so you need to change the time here. Or maybe you want to change the status to closed. Also, you should be able to have the invoices listed here, and you should be able to edit those and add and delete invoices. So those are some more advanced things we're going to get to, and we're going to finalize this app and get it really nice next. But if you just want a basic, simple understanding of Honeycode, you could stop right here. So you have the customers page. You can add a new customer. All of this is right here. It'll add it to your sheet. You have work orders. You can see your work orders. You can filter by today, upcoming, and all. And you can also enter in a new work order. So these things are very basic, and I think it taught you a lot. And like I said, you can stop at this point. But if you want to learn more and really dig into it and see the power of Honeycode, grab a cup of coffee, grab a drink, a snack or something, and hang on. All right, so now we're going to jump into some really cool stuff, a little bit more advanced Honeycode stuff here. So we have our work orders page that shows today, shows upcoming, shows all work orders. So if we click on one, we go to this work orders detail page. So this page gives us more detail about our work orders, but it's not enough. We want to be able to do more on this page. So what we're going to do here is we're going to create an option to edit these fields. So we're going to put a button up here that says edit. We can click it. We can change stuff here. You can imagine somebody needs to change the service time or the date, or maybe change to a different agent or something. So we want to be able to edit these fields right here on the page. Also, we want to display our invoices down here. So the invoices related to this work order. So we want to display them down here. We also want to be able to add to that invoice. So say you go out for a flat tire and they end up having like some other issues that come up and you end up fixing it. You need to add those to the invoice. So this field technician will need to be able to add another row to his invoice and invoice the person right then and there. So that's two things we want to do. We want to be able to edit these fields, and we want to be able to add an invoice down here that we can add data to. So let's start with this edit functionality. All right, so let's go to work orders detail. So the first thing we want to talk about here is how you pass data from one page to another. So that's what's going on basically. There's a work orders page. When we click on the work order, it sends us to the detail of that particular work order. So with Honeycode, there is a variable called, and if we click here, and what happens when we click on this work order, we can come down here and we see that it sets a variable. So it sets this variable, it takes data from this row, and it writes it to a variable called input row. So it's this input row variable that allows us to pass data from one page to another. So when I click on this, it writes this information to this input row variable, and that variable is carried over to the next page. So if we go to the work orders detail page, and you click down here on the, actually you start up here. So up here we have a pick list, obviously. So if you go to display, you'll see we have a row link that's going to show us all of our work orders. But you notice that it falls on a particular work order. That's the work order we passed. So if I come over here, let's jump back, let's grab one of these. Let's choose windshield wiper blades or shot. If we click this, we're going to see, hey, that work order shows up here. Well, how does it do that? We can pick from the list, but we need that particular one to show up with the data below it. That's what that input row variable does. So if we come up here and we click on this, we see that this variable is called input row. So it's going to write that here. If we come down here to the actual data and click on that, we see that the data in this block here is from the input row variable. So that's how you pass data from one page to the next. So we need to make sure, like if I create another block down here and start putting stuff in it and try to access this data, I can't. I got to make sure that block has the input row input coming into it. So just a note, we'll have to work with that in a few minutes. Okay, so here's what I want to do. I want to take this up here. Like I don't think I want a pick list. Like when I go to a work orders detail, I don't want to be able to choose other work orders. I want to stay focused on this one. So I'm going to come up here, instead of deleting this, since this is what kind of defines our page, I'm going to just come up here to the block and display false so that it doesn't show up on the page, but we still have that input row data. So now if I come to the app, this should disappear. Yeah, there it goes. So what I want to do up here is I want to style this a little bit differently. So I'm going to come up here, I'm going to just add a segment to this because I want to stay within that block. So I'm going to add a segment. It's probably going to put it at the bottom. Let's just grab this segment and move it up here to the top of the block. Not outside the block, but right here above the issue oil change. We want to put it right here. I'm going to delete the content box. And what I want to do is I just want to start dragging stuff up here. So I want my date. I don't care about the header, but I want the date up here. Make that a little smaller. And I want the time. Put that right below it. Also, that's going to stay the same width. So I got the date and time there. I can delete these segments. And when it comes to the date, I'm going to change the format just to make it more readable for a work order. Like if I'm out on the field, I don't want to see 7/120. I think I want to format that differently. So I go to date. I'm going to change it to the full January 2nd, 2017. All right, so cool. We have the date, we have the time. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make this background just to differentiate here. I'm going to make that a little dark. I'm going to make the font color white. And then right below that, I'm going to make this more of a light gray. Let that save. There we go. Just looks a little better up there. So hey, I got my time and my date. So how do we edit this page? Well, let's start out by putting an edit button up here. So I'm going to choose this segment, and I'm going to come and choose button. Make that small. I'm going to make this say edit. I'm going to make the background a no fill, and I'm going to make the text just some kind of blue to make it look like a link. And then I'm going to make the text small. So there it is, edit. And now I'm going to, all right, so I have my edit button. So when we click edit, and we can change these things down here, we want a way to say, hey, I'm done editing, which takes me out of edit mode. So let's go ahead and add that. Put that right below it. I'm going to call this done. All right, so we have edit done. How do we flip between these two? Well, we need to put a variable. Remember we talked earlier about in programming we set flags, like we set a variable to false, and then we can flip it to true under certain conditions. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to choose again in this segment, and I'm going to choose a data cell, and I'm going to call it isEdit, and we're going to set it to false. So data equals false, and that's a variable. Don't forget, that needs to be a variable, not a shared source. And then display, I want to hide this. I don't want anybody to see it. I just want it to be there on the page. And it can be basically anywhere. I'm just going to put it right there. So if we look at our page, we should see an edit and a done, but no isEdit variable. Cool. So the best way with Honeycode to make fields editable, like if you look at it currently, they're not editable. The best way to make them editable is to add a second one. We did this earlier with the buttons. Add a second input, make that editable, and make that show when somebody clicks edit. And then when they click done, make that hide in the uneditable version show. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to create 2 copies of this date. We're going to use this as an example. So we're going to copy that. We're going to copy that. So 2 copies of the date, 2 copies of the time. So when we click edit, we want the editable fields. Let's make these second ones editable. So don't click the content box, click the data cell. Make the second one editable with this box here. Come down here and make this editable too. So when we click edit, we want this block to show and this block to show so that we can update, we can type in it. And then when we click done, we want this block and this block to show. So we're just flipping between boxes, editable and not editable. But before we do that, we need to talk about the edit and done button. We want the edit to show initially. So we want the edit to show when this variable is false. So when we click edit, we want this to flip to true and the editable fields to show. When we click done, we want this to flip back to false and the uneditable fields show. So for edit, we're going to put set visibility equals, what we're going to do is we're going to use this function called not. This reverses whatever we put in it. And we're going to say is edit. So if you think about it, is edit, if you just call is edit, that's going to be true and false. So if I just put is edit here, it'll say true. So set visibility to true, it's going to show. We want it to be set to false, so we want not is edit, which means is edit is false, which it currently is. See how it says false? This also equals to false. So we want that to be on the edit button. We also want that to be initially with these uneditable data cells. So when this is false, we want them not to be able to edit. So put these for those fields. And then for the done button, we want that to show only when this is flipped to true. So instead of not is edit, we're going to just choose is edit. I'm going to copy this, and this is going to apply to the editable fields. So you apply that to the content box. So equals is edit. And then down here, set visibility to is edit. Again, that means is edit is true. Great, so is edit is false. Let's go over here now. We should only see edit, and we should only see the non-editable fields. When I click on edit, I want it to flip to show done and to make these two editable. So let's go to edit. Let's go to actions. What do we want to happen? So we want it to update the current screen, and we want to set the variable is edit to true. So take data from equals true and write it to is edit. So that's going to write true to is edit. Now when we click done, we want it to flip back to false. So that action will update the current screen, and we want to set the is edit variable to false. So is edit is going to be equal to false when we do that. So let's test this out. Let the changes save. And let's go over here. So if we click edit, we now see two editable fields. So we can change our date if we want. Let's change this to the 4th. And let's change the time to 10 o'clock. And since these are editable fields, they're going to update the back end anyway, or the sheets, or the tables, whatever you want to call it. So when I click done, it should pop edit back up and show me my uneditable fields. So done. There we go. Wonderful. So we got that functionality in place. Now what fields down here do we want to edit? Well, we don't want to edit the customer because this work order is for that customer. Also, I don't want to edit the address because one customer has only one address. I assume if you change your address, you're going to have to update it in the customer system, and then it'll still show the right address here. So we want to update how about the agent, because we may want to update the agent who we assign this to, and then notes. We want to be able to add notes as needed. So let's go back here. There's a couple of things we should move. So we should put customer up at the top. So let's move that up. Let's also move address up to the top. And what about this issue? Let's move this issue content box up here to the top, just to have it front and center. And let's also bold it. Make it bold. Great. And that means we can get rid of the segment that it was in, and the header there too. Notes, we want agent. Status we can delete because we're going to add a button to close or reopen that in a minute. So close that. Invoice, we can leave it because we're going to work with that next. So let's take, and actually let's move these underneath because it just looks better in my opinion. Let's Move this underneath address. Let's move notes underneath the notes header and all the way down. We can leave agent because we'll deal, we can leave invoice because we'll deal with that later. So what we want to do is we want to update the notes. So let's copy another row there. And we want to update the agent. So let's copy another row there. And we're going to do the same thing there. So when the variable up here is false, which it will be initially, we don't want to edit. So we want to select that content box, come to display, and put equals not is edit. And I'm going to do that also for this field down here. And then for the second one, we're going to select the data cell, make it editable. And then the content box, we're going to put equals is edit. And then down here, we're going to change this to equals is edit. And the data cell, we want to make it editable. Select off of that, let it save. And go to the app. Let's try it out. So here's date and time, here's our issue, here's information down here. If we click edit, we now see we can change these two. We can also change our notes down here. So let's say, what was this, windshield wiper blade shot? Let's say also bought a quart of oil. And then down here for the agent, I don't have anybody else, just me. So I'm just going to select myself. If I click done, we now have some notes there. All right, and something went wrong. Let's check and see what's going on. Oh, we got an error here. So not is edit. We didn't do our closing parentheses. And here, probably the same problem. Check content box is edit, and then not is edit. Yeah, we didn't do the closing parentheses, so you may have caught that. But yeah, that'll definitely mess you up. So let that save, and let's try it again. All right, so edit, also bought a quart of oil. It may have already saved that. Yeah, so it just wasn't pulling the data because I had the wrong thing in the uneditable box. So again, we can change it just to check. Also bought 2 quarts of oil and agent. I'm not going to be able to change it again. So hit done, and it should save it. Yeah, also bought 2 quarts of oil. Cool. So if we needed to change the date or the time or the notes or add some more notes or change to a different agent, we can now do that. Now, what do we want to do next? And we can start this here. Let's just go down to Invoice. Choose this data cell here and just click data cell again. And then I'll put one right beside it. And what we want to do is for that data, we want to do a equals invoice. So equals invoice, and just click off of that. And they don't have an invoice. Let's create an invoice real quick so we can test this. And we actually have an invoice for Joe Beans. So what that must mean is that we don't have a connection here with their customer. So if you think about it, an invoice belongs to a work order. We have the work order. We have the connection here, but I bet you anything, if we go to the work orders table, we don't have an invoice connector. See that? So we can just come up here, just right click, go to format, and column formula, we're going to put equal. We're going to do a filter because that's what we always do. And we're going to choose from the invoice table. And the condition is going to be invoice. And the work order from that table. So the invoice work order equals, and what do you think it's going to be? Well, it's going to be this row because that's that magical formula. So again, filter, we're going to filter out from the invoice table invoice work orders that equal this row. So hit apply, and you should see a value, an issue here. All right, let's check and see what happened. Where's my formula? I don't know what happened, but my formula disappeared. So let's try it again. Filter. You know what? I probably didn't put quotes around that. So anyway, I shouldn't have removed it from the box here. But let's try it again. Invoice. Make sure I put my quotes. So invoice table, work orders from that table must equal this row. All right, click out of that and hit apply. Let's try it again. Boom, there we go. So we just didn't have the syntax right or something. But anyway, right here for Joe Beans, we can see we have one invoice related. There it is. So now we have that connection, that relationship. So if we go back to our builder, go to our app, we should see that now. So here's oil change. It's for Joe Beans, and down here we should have the associated invoice. Great. And so what I was doing here by adding this beside each other is I was just going to put space and put this in parentheses. So we know, hey, we have one invoice, and I'm going to delete this content box. And that's going to lead us into the invoice below. So this is going to be another task, going to be really fun. But just to take a look at what we got again, this is great work. So if I go to my work orders and I choose Mr. Joe Beans, where's he at? Upcoming, all. Let's find that oil change here. I click that. Great. We can edit. We can change things down here. And we also see we have one invoice. So now let's add the invoice stuff below it. And just to recap, we're going to have a table header. We're going to have our invoices listed out below it. And we're going to be able to add a new item to that and total it up and all that other cool stuff to add to our edit feature. So this page is going to be great. So we want to put our invoices below this. So I want to add a new object. Let's go ahead and add a new block. Let's put a new block there. Let's remove the content box. I'm going to make this dark. So let's make it about like that. So if you think about a table, you have table headers. That's what we're basically building here. So along here in a row, I'm going to add my invoice headers. So I can simply just come here and create a bunch of content boxes. So let's put that. Let's make it a little smaller, and then let's just copy and paste that. So paste, paste. I think I need about 5. All right, so thinking about our invoices, we're going to need item. And next will be number or quantity. Next will be unit cost. Unit cost, and then I think we had labor, and then total. So I'm going to put these side by side. Just scoot this up here. That's fairly small. And right beside total, I'm going to add a button. This is going to be the button for us to add a new invoice row. So put this button here. Let's call it plus item. And I'm going to make the background a no fill and make the text bluish and a little bit smaller. Let's do 14. So it looks like a button, like plus item, how you add an item. And we may need to adjust these further, but let's leave it for now. So under this, we want to put our actual item list. So I'm going to come up here and type in list, and we want a stacked list. List source is going to be invoice. We don't need a detail screen, anything to filter. And let's keep all of this for now. So let's hit create. And this is going to create a list of our invoices. And we don't want to search. And we don't really want any of these headers. So I'm going to take this first one out. And I'm going to start moving things around. So the item is going to be oil. So let's put that there. The next item is going to be the quantity. So let's grab that, make it smaller, and drag it up here beside oil. And we want to kind of keep these the same length. So that ends there, so that looks good. Unit cost. Let's make that smaller as well. And grab this box, move it up to there. Let's stretch that out a little bit. So I'm just going to remove this stuff we don't need. So we don't need anything to do with notes. We don't need this header. We don't need this context box. And we don't need this context box. And I can delete the segments. Just cleaning up things here. Next we have labor. So let's make this smaller. And move that up. And finally we have the total. Let's grab that and move it up as well. And these look pretty well lined up, so I'm just going to leave them like that. Grab the segment, delete these segments. All right, so let that save, and then let's check out our app. Let's go to work orders. We don't have any for today, so let's just grab this one. Down here, we have our table header with our item button here, and then we have the row, the invoice below that. And let's actually make that a little bit gray as well. So let's come up here and just make it a little bit gray, maybe a little less than that, just to make it stand out. Cool. So just to reiterate, what we want to do here is we want to be able to click this item and have it bring up a new row below this that we can edit. So let's start by creating a variable. And we've done this several times. We've created a variable and then defined it somehow. So I'm going to select this segment here and find my data cell, add that there. We're going to make sure this is a variable, and we're going to call it new entry. And this is what we're going to write things to kind of manipulate things down here. And we, of course, want to make this false. So visibility is false. All right, so we have this variable we can assign things to. So let's go back to our button and let's get this button set up. So I'm going to click that. When we click this, so we're going to go to Actions. When we click this button, we're going to want to create an automation first. And what we want to do is we want to add a new row. So add a row. We want to add a row to invoices, of course. So select invoice. And like we said earlier, this is the work orders detail page. So remember, on the work orders page, when we clicked that work order, it took this variable called input row and transferred that data through that variable to this page. So remember, we can access any of that stuff through this input row variable. So here, what we want to do is we want to add a row to invoice. We want to take data from this input row. So this is going to be all the data, and we want to write that to the work order column. Remember, our work order column has a row there that contains the work order information. Hopefully that makes sense. We want to take all of this data and write it to that work order column. So if I save that, let me save this. Maybe I can explain this a little better. If we go to invoices, so invoice, and see work order, see how that whole, that brings down a pick list of the whole work order. That's what we want to do. We want to write that input row to this column as a new row. Because it's still the same work order. There's different invoice items, but it's still the same work order. So we want to start by creating a new row with that work order already filled out. So let's go back to the app. Let's jump down here, click the item button, go to Actions. All right, so we're writing this input row to work order. That's going to create the new row. That's going to add the work order to the invoices. And now we want to update the screen. So let's add another action here and say navigate. And here we want to update current screen. And we want to set a variable, and it's going to be input row. And what we want to do basically is write this input row to itself. In short, this just kind of refreshes this context. So if I put input row, I'm going to have it write and kind of refresh itself. In addition to that, we want to write this input row, this information here, to this variable. And this is very important. You're going to see why in a minute, but we want this information also to be written to this variable. And we're going to do this by using a formula or a function. So let's do find last row. And remember, find last row returns the last row that matches the condition. So what's the condition? Well, the tables is going to be invoice. The condition is going to be, let me put two quotes there. It's going to be invoice. And the work order column, remember that has our entire data there. Work order column, and that needs to equal the input row. So we're just grabbing that data we just wrote, and we're going to write that to this variable. So we're taking this data, we're grabbing the data we just wrote, making sure it matches, and writing it to this variable. So I'm going to click off that, and we should be good there. So we need to jump down here to this row. So how do we handle this? Well, we want this row. This row is already there. This has nothing to do with a new row. So we want this row to show if new entry is not equal to this row. So basically, if new entry hasn't been defined with what we just set up over here, we want to show this row because this is not the new row. So what we want to do here is we want to say display this if, so if this variable new entry is not equal to this row. All right, so this is not going to be a new row. And we want to do that for all of these values here in the row. So check that, add it, check that, add it, check that, add it, and also the total, and add it there. But when we click this item button, and the context or this input row has been written to this new entry variable, we actually want to show that row. So we need to create a duplicate row below this that we can manipulate. So let's take each one of these and let's copy and paste these. Except for the total. We don't really want the total. All right, and for each of these, we want to do two things. We want to make it so new entry is equal to this row, and we also want to make this value editable. You'll see how this works in a minute. You might be confused here. This is kind of complicated, a complicated part of it, but you'll see here in just a minute. Make this equal, make this editable. Editable. So basically what we're doing, hey, if we're not calling a new row, if we're not trying to add a new item, we don't want to show this stuff down here. And we should be good here. And again, you'll see how this works in a minute. So also we want to add an X over here so that we can remove a row. So let's click in this area. Let's create a button. And I'm going to put an X and just make that red. Let's pick a real bright red. I also want to make the background a no fill and make this a lot smaller. Good. All right, so we have this X. And finally, the last step is we want to make this X delete the row. And they've made this pretty easy with Honeycode. Just go to Actions and create an automation, and starts when clicked. When this button is clicked, we actually want to delete a row. And what's the row? It's going to be the context row. So if you look here, it says the context row is the triggering row in a table or a list, or a row returned by a repeat formula. The context row, if present, is deleted by default. So this will delete this row here, or whatever row you're clicking on. If I click the third row, it's going to delete the third row. All right, so let's let this save and let's try it out. See if it works. Cool. So down here I have my table header. I have the first item. So we can try to press the plus item button, and we should get another row below it. There it is. You see how it says edit value for each of these? I can now say, let's say wipers, because that's the only thing I know. They need windshield wipers. They need 2 in the front, 1 in the back. So let's put 3. Let's say they're $7 a piece, and the labor is $10. Let's click off of that. And then if you want to add another one, just click item, and you can add another one. But let me delete that one. So let's delete that one. And you see we have the totals. So 4 times 5 is 20, plus 10 is 30. 3 times 7 is 21, plus 10 is 31. So our item button is working, and we just deleted that last one. Let's delete this one just to check. If I click this X, boom, it's gone. So we can add now, and we can delete invoices. Now, right below this, we want to kind of tally it all up and have a final total cost. So let's create another block, and let's remove the content. And of course, with these blocks, we have to set the data to be the input row. so that we can access the data that's brought over. And within this, I just want to add a content box. Inside of it, I'm going to put total, and then I'm going to add a data cell. And to get the total, all we have to do is, you probably know this is like the only function I knew in Excel when I started this, and that's the sum function. So this needs to be shared, and we're just going to type equals sum, and we're going to type invoice, and we want to get, and we want to get the total. So we're going to sum all of the totals together in the invoice table. So let's click off of that. Wait, I forgot the closing parentheses. Oh, and the whole thing's gone. For some reason it's gone. I don't know why that is. Anyway, let's try it again. Equals sum, make sure both of my parentheses are there, invoice, and total. All right, click off of that. I got the blue dot, and now I should see a total of whatever it's supposed to be, 30. Great, and I'm just going to move this over. I'm going to make this background a no fill, and I'm going to make the text white. And I'm going to make this word total bold. Well, it kind of made both bold. Anyway, let's have them both bold. That's fine. And I want to make this block dark. So let's pick a darker gray. There we go. Total 30. And we don't want 30, we want $30. So let's change this to currency with 2 decimal places. Let that update. There it is, $30. All right, and finally, we just need to put some buttons down here. We want a delete button, a mark complete button if it's still open, and a reopen button if it's closed and we need to reopen this issue. So let's add another segment down here. Blank block. Add the data source again. Just going to be equal input row. And in here, I'm going to add 3 buttons. So 1, 2, 3. 2, 3. Scoot these, make them about that big. I'm going to take the second button and move it up here. Move it to there. And I'm going to take this other button and move it right below it. So over here, I'm going to put delete to delete the work order. Here, I'm going to put mark complete. And here, I'll put reopen. Delete, I'm going to make like a red, and we'll fix all this stuff later. Background, I'm going to make like a red. Mark complete, I'm going to make green. Oops, not the text. White text. Make the background green. About a lighter green. Or a darker green, yeah. No, this green's good. Yeah, I'll make it green. And then reopen, I don't know. Maybe I'll just leave it blue. We'll worry about it later. Let's get the functionality working first. So delete, again, is pretty easy. And then I want to add an action, and I want to delete a row. I want to delete this work order, right? And that's handled by context row. Context row is this amazing thing that does the work for you. So I can leave it just like that, context row. That one's finished. How about mark complete? Well, we don't want both of these to show. We want mark complete to show only if the status is open, and we want reopen to show only if the status is closed. So mark complete, we can say display, set visibility. So we want to say equals, and then we want to put status. If status equals open, we want to show that one. And let me just copy that. And for reopen, we only want to show if status is closed. Let that save, and let's check it out. So I think our current work order is open, so we should only see mark complete. Great. All right, so now let's handle the actions. So for mark complete, if I go to actions, we want to create an automation. We want to add an action, and what we want to do when we're marking complete, we're going to be changing the status from open to closed. So we want to overwrite a value. So click overwrite. In the data from, we want to do a find row function. So find row, we're going to check the status table, put some quotes here. We want to check the status table for the status value where that equals closed. And remember, we got to do these extra quotes. So make sure you put enough there. That's 2 quotes around the word closed. And we want to take that data and write it to status. And then for reopen, we want to do the opposite. So we want to go to actions, create an automation, add an action, we want to overwrite, we want to do find row, status table, and we want status, where it equals open. Click off that, make sure it's blue. Yep, and we want to write that to status, of course. All right, and then there's one very last thing we forgot. If we go over to delete and actions, we did an automation, so we can click edit automation. But down here at the bottom, we didn't redirect. Like if we delete this work order, we want to redirect back to the work orders page. So let's make sure we add that. So add actions, navigate, and we want to navigate to new screen, and that would navigate to the work orders screen. Click off of that and save it. Saving changes, and now let's test it out. I think we're done with this page. So let's go here, just to refresh, let's go to work orders. Let's go to all and choose oil change. All right, we got this here. So because the status is open, we see a mark complete button. So we click that, it should mark this complete. Actually, let's open up this in our table. So let's go to work orders, find this work order. I think it, let me see which one it was. This was the oil change. It is currently open. So if we click this mark complete, we now see the reopen button, which tells us it should be closed. So let's go here and we see it's closed. If we decide we want to reopen this, we just click reopen and we should see it open again. Great, so that's working. Now let's delete this. So we have the oil change here. If we go to delete, it should redirect us back to the work orders page. Click delete, work orders page. Now let's come over here and that is gone. So our work orders detail page is now complete. Great job. All right, so there's actually a couple of things left to do in the app. And to be honest, those couple of things are gonna take a while, and this video's already gotten like really long. The good news is that you've learned all of the concepts throughout this video to where you can finish these last 2 tasks easily. I mean, the things in these last 2 tasks, which I'm gonna go over, have already been taught to you. So one of those is when you go to customers and you click on a customer, there's a customer's detail page. You can see this is kind of lacking. And if you go to the example app, like this HVAC app that they provided, here's their customer details page. So they have, you can skip this up here, but they have the customer name, which they made editable. So I'm gonna open it up here in the app. So basically what you can do is you can split this up. So you got the customer name up here, which we already have. You just need to style it a little bit. And that's in its own block. Then you got these separator blocks. So here's a block that has a gray background that says contact, and then the contact information. They got this block that says properties, and then they got addresses and all of that. Then they got a block that says work orders, and it mentions their work orders. So what you're doing here is you're just pulling in information about this customer. So here's their contact information. Here's their address and other properties, probably from the properties table, and then work orders information. So you know how to do that. So then there's this add button. So let's look at it in the actual app. So if that's work orders. So if I go to customers and I click on a customer, you can see it all here. So they got these separators, they got information that you can edit. If I go to add here, I want to add another property. So this is going to add customer data. Remember the properties table that holds the customer's addresses. This is going to add another address for that customer, I'm assuming. So if I click add, a field pops up here and I can add another address. If I click done, it'll probably put it right there. It's blank. And then I can delete it. You already know how to do that. You know how to add a field, and you're just going to add it from the properties table. Down here in work orders, it's the same thing. Click create, and it's going to take you to the new work orders page. So that's cool. It didn't do it on the page there. It just took you to the new page. So that's one thing. You can go to customers. You can fix this customer's detail page. You can also dress up this customer's page a little bit, which looks a little better than Airs. The second thing you can do is you can go to new order, and they have an option here. So what we have is, hey, there's a customer. You choose them from the list. Let's say we choose this person, and then you enter in their issues. We have that already. It may not be styled as nice as this, but we have that already. But they have this other feature in here that you can actually add a new customer here instead of having to go to customers and do it. You can do it all here from the work orders. So you can click new customer, and that actually brings up the customer's form. And all that's doing is that's having a new customer's form here on the page that's hidden until you choose that new customer value. And if you go back to the database, their database, let's look at their, or not database, but table. If you go to customers, you see they put one in here called new customer. So you can say, hey, if this new customer is chosen, then we want to show the new customer's form also above the work order information. If not, we want to hide it. So you know 100% how to do that too. So those are the two outstanding items that you can add to your app. Now, if you have any issues with it, you can't figure something out, just leave me a comment and I'll get you the answer. No problem. But I know 100% you can do this. Now, there's one other thing I noticed here, and there may be others, but there's just one thing I want to mention. When you delete a work order, remember when we go back to work orders, let's go to work orders, we click this, let's go to upcoming, click a work order. Like when you add some invoices down here, right? You have these invoices that are related to this work order. Now remember, we can click delete and delete the work order. Now when you delete that, it doesn't delete the associated invoices. So it leaves those invoices with this reference error in the relation. So what you want to do also is when you delete this context, you're going to want to filter for the invoices for this work order and make sure those get deleted too. And you know 100% how to do that too. Again, let me know if you're having trouble with it, but that's just a thought. I don't think the demo app even did that. So that's an option. But I think you can take this here, you can run with it, and I think throughout this video you've learned like 90% of the concepts here to where you can build any app for any company in your freelance business or however you want to use this with Honeycode. So hey, hope this was helpful. Be sure to hit that like button and subscribe button, and I will see you in the next video.